Alright, so this will be the first of hopefully a series of rapid fire episodes while my family is up in Chicago. I'm hoping to produce one every other day, and we're starting this rapid fire series off with the fortresses of Belgium. Now, Belgium played a pivotal role in the First World War, not because they were the biggest or the strongest or really first in any category. They played an important role because with what little they had, they managed to slow down the Germans just enough for the tide to shift just enough that we get locked into the stalemate that becomes World War I. Now, Belgium realizes fairly early on that they are going to be in the middle of a war. Like either France or Germany is going to do something and they will be caught in the middle. So Belgium makes 3 cities impossibly fortified. There's a couple other cities that are also fortified pretty heavily, but there's 3 main ones that get used in the First World War, and these are Liège, Namur, and Antwerp. Now, Liège is specifically designed to slow down any German advances. Namur is designed to slow down any French advances. And then Antwerp is going to be used as the nation's last stand. It is where if something goes wrong, the final defenders will be in Antwerp fighting to the end, which ends up happening. So you have a couple tens of thousands of brave Belgians that are pretty underprepared and under-equipped that face off and truly do end up going toe-to-toe against hundreds of thousands of Germans. But it's not like tens of thousands of Belgians holding out in a line nice and neatly against the Germans. It's like pockets of a couple hundred here and a couple hundred there in these forts. Now, if you look at the image on the screen here, this is the German Schlieffen Plan. Now, this is the plan that has been in place for Germany for decades. The guy that made this has spent literally the better half of his life just obsessing over this plan. And the plan calls for them to get through Belgium immediately. They are supposed to spend 2 days in Liège, and they're supposed to just blitz straight through Belgium, and they should get to Paris in 40 days. Now, because of these Belgians, even though they lose 95% of their country, play such a pivotal role that it works, and they managed to stop the Germans. So that's what we're talking about today. Now, the first city we're going to talk about is Liège. This photograph here shows the 12 forts protecting the city, and each one of these forts plays a very important role. Now, these forts are made in the 80s and early 90s, as in 1880 and 1890, and at the time of their creation, these are top of the line, just amazing forts. They are the thickest forts that can withstand any shell that could be fired upon the fort at the time. They have the thickest shells that they can throw back at the time. I mean, these are amazing forts. When I say the biggest guns possible, we are talking about 21 centimeter guns, which equates to about 8 inches. And on paper, this fort can withstand hits of also about 8 inches. It has 13-foot thick concrete roofs and 4-foot thick concrete walls. I mean, the forts are supposed to be just impenetrable. Nobody can take these forts, supposedly. But a lot changes in 20 years, and they end up losing the forts. But not without an extremely good fight. Now, this photograph here is one of those forts at Liège. You can see all the different entrances, and this is post-battle, but they have a ditch in front, and there's a couple different ways in and out, and you have all these crazy things. They're good forts on paper, and they were good forts in 1890. But, I mean, a lot changed in 20 years. Now, there are these 9 different forts, and every single fort pretty much gets reused for World War II. They get taken in World War I, they are recaptured at the end of World War I, and then they get modernized and used in World War II, except for one, which is Fort Lanson, which is completely and entirely destroyed, beyond repair. And we'll talk about that in a minute as well. Now, the forts have their own power, and they have their own water. They have everything that they would need. still not a place that you would want to be in. Like, if you could choose to be somewhere else, you would want to be somewhere else. Now, this photograph shows the cross-section of one of those forts. You have that massive concrete roof, and you have the ammunition storage well into the earth, and you have the ditch in front and the parapet, like good, genuine forts. And then you have that 8-inch gun sitting on a rotating turret that can move itself up and down to give it more leverage. Like, it's a really good design, and also it has a weak side purpose-built on the rear of the fort, the side that is facing the city. And the thinking was, since we have so many forts all in a circle, if they can get one fort, then they can probably get the other forts. But if we can make a weak side, when they get the forts, it'll be easier for us to counterattack and reclaim the fort, because we'd be coming up behind the fort anyway. So that's kind of their thinking there. And again, it works, kind of. There are some other issues, like you have a bunch of the barracks and sanitation stuff that's located outside of the main citadel of the fort, which doesn't really hold up too well when you're actively being shelled, because then you can't get out there, and kind of leads to the downfall of some of the forts. Now, the Germans show up on August 4th, 1914, explicitly expecting a 2-day battle for the city. Like, they truly did think that in 2 days the city would be theirs and they could just continue on their way to Paris. However, they only bring guns that cannot penetrate the fort. So they have to reroute some of their special artillery. Some of their super heavy artillery has to get rerouted from the road to Antwerp and Namur back down to Liège. Now, this special artillery takes 8 days to arrive. That says something about just how heavy the guns are, that it takes 8 days to get there. Now, the first heavy artillery starts firing on the 12th, and by the 15th, all of the forts have collapsed. The city is now under German control, and that's it. Now, this just goes to show just how large the guns are. The photograph you see on the screen here is one of those turrets that was inside of the fort, one of the biggest in the world. This is an 8-inch gun. That is a respectable artillery piece. That's fine, that's good. But the Germans roll out a 420 millimeter or 16.5-inch Krups gun. This was being experimented on earlier in 1914. They only have a handful fielded at the start of World War I, and they're throwing the entire weight of all of the ones they have in the field at these forts, and they just do lethal amounts of damage. To give you an idea of just how large a 16.5-inch gun is, here's a photograph of it. Its nickname was Big Bertha, and it is the biggest gun on the planet, hands down. Now, the second biggest gun is a 13-inch cannon on a British battleship that was only built a few years prior. When that ship was built, it was supposed to rule the seas. It has the biggest gun. It's got the most armor. It's the best. But then on land, not even on a floating platform, on land, they can transport a gun that is 3.5 inches larger. To give you another idea of just how impossibly large this cannon is, the next 20 years, you see the Iowa-class battleship produced by the United States with 16-inch cannons, so a half-inch smaller than what the Germans are fielding now, and that is ruling the seas. This gun is just monumentally massive. If you saw this in World War I, it would just blow you away, literally and figuratively, because it's just that large. Now, there are some downsides to this cannon, most of them revolving around the weight. It is so incredibly large that you have to dismantle the entire thing into a ton of different pieces, and then you have to transport it, however that may be. Maybe it's with a boat, like what you see in the background of this photo. Maybe it's on rail. Maybe it's super tiny pieces with horse-drawn carts. Who knows how you get it there, but it takes just forever to get it there. This thing weighs over 40 tons, almost coming in on 50 tons. That is impossibly heavy. Also, you can only set it up at its fastest rate in maybe 8 hours if you are really good at it. But, I mean, again, this is being experimented on in early 1914. Nobody's really good at setting these up yet. And then just to top all of this off, you can fire maybe 8 shells an hour. At its maximum sustained fire rate, you can do 8 shells. But again, there's only a handful of these out there. So you wouldn't be firing exactly 8 shells an hour because you don't want to wear out the barrel, or you don't want to overheat it, or you don't want to do a multitude of different things. So you're not really firing 8 shells an hour consistently every single hour. Now, when these guns do roll up at Liege, they slowly, one by one, just start annihilating each of these forts. They can fire farther than the forts can. They can fire out of sight of the forts. They can do a multitude of different things. However, to the credit of the smaller guns, they have taken out most of the electricity and ventilation at most of the forts. So now you have people literally suffocating to death inside of the forts. They have no electricity. The forts are in ruin, but not taken. But then when this guy shows up at Fort Lonson specifically, the fort that was completely destroyed and was not rebuilt after the war, when this guy shows up, it only takes an hour and a half for the fort to fall. At around 4 p.m. that day, that gun opens up, and at 5:30, one of those rounds managed to make it into an ammunition magazine, which was built too close to the surface, and literally blows the top off of the fort. Literally, the walls shoot outwards, the fort collapses. This photograph here is that fort today. This is that turret that you saw in one of the earlier photographs that's just collapsed into the fort. I mean, the entire thing just went up in a ball of flames, and the fort obviously surrenders immediately. Now, one cool thing about this is that the commander of this fort is knocked unconscious and he's taken by the Germans. And after he's taken, he just writes the most insane letter to his king, basically apologizing for letting the fort fall. And in the letter he says, "I would gladly have given my life, but death would not have me." I mean, just the absolute insane dude that was commanding that fort to hold out for 11 days. Wild. So now the Germans are 9 days behind schedule. They expected this to be 2 days. It is now 11 days, and they have lost thousands of German troops just at this one city alone, and they still have to get through 2 more. So little scrappy Belgium's putting up a fight. Now the Germans start rolling on to Namur, which is built purposely to protect against the French, but it does have the added effect of protecting against the Germans. This photograph here shows the 9 forts that sit in a ring around the city. So you have the Germans that got wise after Liege. They realized what their mistakes were and what they're going to have to do. So they just wait until their siege guns show up. They don't even try to attack the forts, they're just going to wait. However, because they had to wait, the Belgians get time to reinforce the forts. So the forts are getting ready, more people are being called up, they're making defensive positions in between the forts, they've made trenches, they're getting ready. And on August 20th, the Germans show up. By the 23rd, those massive 420mm cannons show up and they start firing. Well, by the 25th, the city has fallen, and we're talking maybe a couple hundred casualties on the German side. It was over before it really began. So Namur falls pretty quickly. And it also has the added effect that because the Germans took the city so easily, the French saw their position on the Sambre River, which borders Belgium and France, untenable. So they start pulling back as well because they know that they can't withstand the German efforts. Well, now the Germans see that the French are starting to retreat, so they start making their turn west. And all is looking like it's going well. They've taken out Liege, they've taken out Namur, the French are in full retreat, and they think that they're doing well, except they still have to take Antwerp. So at this time, pretty much everything north-ish, take this with a grain of salt, it's not a super accurate statement, but everything north-ish of Namur is still Belgian at the time. So Antwerp sees this, and they have 21 forts, one in an outer ring and then another in an inner ring, as well as tons of trenches and flooded fields and defensive positions. Like, they really got ready. And at the time, Antwerp was considered like the defended city in the world. Like, if anything was going to fall, it wasn't going to be Antwerp. It does fall, keynote, but not for a little bit. So the Germans start their turn east for France, and Belgium sees this, and they start sending out these little sorties to disrupt the German lines and see if they can screw with them at all or slow them down or really do anything. Well, the first 2 sorties go well. The third sortie, the French have retreated across the Sambre River, and now the Germans realize that, like, it really is time to take Antwerp, because the Allies are going to reinforce Antwerp soon, and Antwerp is sending out these sorties. Like, they gotta take it at some point, and it might as well be soon. So, you have the Germans showing up on September 28th of 1914. Except Winston Churchill, the same Winston Churchill as World War II, is inside of the city in early October, helping with the defenses at Antwerp. Like, he has purposely got there, he is looking at all the defensive positions, he's calling in different troops that he can get from Britain, and there's a couple thousand like naval marines there, and he's trying to get the 7th Division that's been newly formed by Britain over into Antwerp. Like, he really wants to hold Antwerp and make sure that they have the help they need. Now, starting the night of the 28th, they realize that, like, there's a lot of people out there. So we're going to start retreating people out. So they start sending trains every single night, starting on the 28th, with the wounded, civilians, any new troops that weren't super trained, and they're sending them into the unoccupied part of Belgium, which is north of them. Now, part of the reason why it took so long from the end of August when Namur falls to late September when the siege of Antwerp starts is because the British once again realized that they're going to have to wait for their super heavy guns to show up. So by late September going into early October, when these massive guns show up, they start taking out the outer ring of forts very quickly. And these outer ring of forts do end up falling pretty fast. So the British and Belgian troops retreat into the city to make one last stand. And by the middle of October 7th, the heavy guns are now in range of Antwerp. It is also important to note just the lengths that the Belgians went to protect Antwerp. They had almost a full month to prepare, and they didn't waste a single minute. You have demolition teams that are literally blowing up churches and buildings and anything that could disrupt the line of sight from their forts to just the massive open fields that surround Antwerp. It is impossible to imagine just how flat it is over there. Like, you can just see forever over there. So if they can remove any obstructions, they can see forever, and that'll give them more time. So they've done this, but it doesn't matter, because by the October 7th, they're now inside the city, and it's like this last stand sort of thing. Now, by the afternoon of October 8th, really most of the Belgian army has started retreating out of Antwerp and to the north, going into the unoccupied parts of Belgium. Now, the British troops remain to cover this retreat, and there's a lot of Belgian troops too. Make no mistake, the Belgians are really fighting for their last breath at this city, but the main part of their army has retreated out of there. Now, by October 9th, most of the troops, including the British troops, have left the city. They have left, and they have ran out of Antwerp to the north to go protect what is left of Belgium on this kind of like fighting retreat. Like, it is so empty that on October 9th, the Germans are rolling into the inner city forts, and they are just finding them completely empty. And by October 10th, the fight is over. Antwerp has been lost, but the main Belgian army has been saved to fight on another day. This photograph here shows early on in the war where the line was drawn, and you can see in the top left corner just the tiniest little sliver of what is left of Belgium. And that would be the Ypres salient, the 5% that survived the initial invasion until we managed to get it back in 1918. Now, the Belgian army did end up fighting pretty well for the remainder of the war. They held from the sea, kind of just north of the Ypres salient. They fought well, and they really did play a part. And again, it may not have been like the most important part. Like, they did not cause the most casualties, they didn't take the most land. but it is a direct result of them holding out at Liège for 11 days that the French got their footing and had time to prepare for the Battle of the Marne, where they managed to turn back the Germans and save Paris from being overrun. It is the slight delay at Namur that gives them even more time to prepare. And it is the 2 sorties out of Antwerp that cause the Germans to realize that they have to take Antwerp and it's going to be a fight, which causes even more of a delay. And even then, it was like one big screw you to the Germans where they managed to take a couple thousand Germans down with them. And it was also this like big propaganda thing for the Allies. Like, Belgium will not give up. They are fighting to the last city. They are doing a good thing here. Like, we should help them. Like, it was this whole big thing. And Belgium really did play a crucial part in the first 2 months of the First World War. And it's really fascinating to look at. So that'll conclude my rant for this evening. And I hope I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.